Welcome to Dental Business RX. Practice success in 30 minutes or less.
Thank you for calling ABC Dental.
So, first episode of 2025. So let me start off by wishing you a Happy New Year. I truly hope that this year is your best ever and that you achieve exactly what you set out to do. And with beginning a new year and the goals we set for ourselves in mind, let's zero in on what I'd like to cover in this week's episode, and I'll kick it off by asking you a few questions. So question number one is, are you currently, or is your practice rather, in network? Do you accept PPOs? You know, if you're the average dental practice, up to 70 or 80% of your patient base is in network. So that's my first question. Second question is, if you are in network, obviously if you're not in network, you don't have to answer this one, but if you are in network, how much on average are you writing off? You know, the average PPO has you writing off at the low end, and this is being kind, 30, 35% of your normal fee, whereas, you know, the more realistic operating average is in the 40s or the 50% range. So you're doing a crown for $780 when your full fee is $1,350, which would be a 42% write-off, or a cleaning exam and bite wings is normally $310, but you're doing it in network for $145, which is a 53% write-off. So that would be my next question. How much are you writing off? And then here's my last part of this thought experiment that I want you to do as we start this new year. How much did your practice collect last year? So get that number. In 2024, how much did your practice collect? Get that number in your head for a second. Now, for the sake of this podcast, let's say that number is $900,000. So let's say you're in network and your average write-off is in the 40s and you collected $900,000. And let's say 70% of your practice are in-network patients. So if we do those numbers, collected 900, and I know, you know, produced, collected, I'm talking collected, like what you actually collected. 70% was PPO, and your average write-off was 40%, which would be kind. You wrote off or didn't get paid $420,000. Like if you do the math, 70% of your revenues was PPO, and you only got 60 cents on the dollar for those 70%, then you essentially wrote off $420,000. So you collected 900, but you didn't collect another 420 that you could have collected if you were charging full fee. So if you charge your full fee, your practice would have collected $1.32 million instead of $900,000. So let's say this is you, these numbers that I'm throwing around, or close to it, or maybe even worse. So the next question is this. If you're in network, did you pay your bills last year? Did you pay your staff? You know, 99 times out of 100, if I ask a doctor this question, they're going to say yes. They did pay their bills. They paid their staff. They, paid their lab bill, their supply bill, their rent, etc., even though they're writing off all that money. So everybody's getting paid except you. So who's getting shortchanged? You are. Meanwhile, if you look at the insurance companies that you're in network with, these are companies with billion-plus dollar valuations. Well, meanwhile, you're scrapping for whatever money that you can get and shortchanging yourself. So if you're a doctor who collected $900,000 instead of $1.32 million, like I did in this example, take a minute and think about what that extra $420,000 would have meant to you, to your family, even to your practice. What equipment could you have paid for cash? What could you have used for expansion? So then the question really becomes, if this is the situation you find yourself in, or at least something similar to what I'm describing, why stay in network? Why not get out? Why not make 2025 the year that you finally take the plunge and have a fee-for-service practice? Well, that's what I want to discuss in this week's episode. My name is Jeff Bloomberg, and I'm your host. And I thought, first episode of the new year, people are taking a look at what they want to accomplish for 2025. This would be a great episode to start with because this, network write-offs afflict a large percentage of the profession. We have a lot of clients who have gotten out of network, and we've seen the positive results, by doing so. So what I want to look at in this episode is why people don't get out, why they have a tendency to stay in, even though they know they shouldn't. And, if I ask the average doctor, would you like to be charging your normal fee? Of course, they're going to all say yes. Nobody's going to go, yeah, I love doing $675 crowns. But then why do people stay in? So we're going to take a look at that. And then we're going to take a look at, what does it look like? What's actually involved with dropping plans? What's the sequence, right? So if this is something that you've wanted, or it's been on your radar, this podcast should help. Now, I should also mention, I want to mention this now because this is only happening in a couple days. The evening of January 8th, which is 2 days from when this episode airs, we are going to be doing a webinar on how to get out of plans. I'll put a link to it on the episode webpage. It is free. It's only about an hour or so long, and we get into the nitty-gritty of what's entailed with actually dropping these things. So if you want to find out more, click and register on the link on the episode webpage. So the first question is, why do people stay in? And I say this after having talked to a lot of doctors over the years who are concerned about dropping plans. So this isn't hard to figure out. It's you figure that if you drop plans, if you get out of network, you're going to lose patients, which there is a degree of truth to that. The average PPO, when you drop them, you're going to lose about 30% of those patients. That's been the average we've plotted over the years. Now, for some, it's a little more unless you take more aggressive action. And by some, I mean usually Delta. That one's a little bit rougher, but it can be handled. We've had numerous clients drop or get out of network with Delta. And the other side of this is just to clear this up. When I say get out of network, I don't mean get rid of these patients. I mean, you're still going to see these patients. You're just not going to accept network fees, okay? So the average practice is going to lose about 30% of the patients that they have from that plan. That's just something to know. But the main reason people don't drop out is they're worried. If you drop out of network and half your patients go away, how are you going to pay your bills? It's a bit of a catch-22. You find yourself in a situation where you hate what you're getting paid. You're not getting paid what you're worth. Meanwhile, inflation has gone parabolic the last 4 years. It's over 21%, and those are the official government numbers, which, not to be a conspiratorial individual, usually those are done in the way that's most favorable to the government, so I think those numbers are higher. You've probably seen things on social media, TikTok, Instagram, where someone goes to Walmart and 3 years later goes and buys the same exact stuff. I've seen one where it's 3 times what they spent back in 2019. So I think the number's a little higher than 21%. But beyond that, your numbers, your costs have gone up for staff, for rent, maybe not rent, but staff, supplies, lab, etc. But your reimbursements in a lot of cases, if you're a network, have either stayed the same or gone down. So you go, okay, this is a horrible situation I find myself in, but I don't want to get out because if I get out, I'm going to lose patients, then I'm not going to make any money. So it's just not a great way to exist, right? It's a little bit of a fear, and it's not necessarily an unfounded fear. It is a fixable fear, but I understand, I guess is my point, right? But the idea that if you get out of network that nobody's going to come in is completely false. We've seen this rolled out time and time again, but you can't run as business as usual. Okay, you can't do business as usual. It's not like you can just drop plans and change nothing and think that it's no big deal. There are a few changes that you have to make in your practice. You have to be a bit proactive to make sure that you actually not only maintain your level of revenue, but you actually increase your revenue levels while you're dropping plans. And if you look at the basic math, if you're doing things at a normal fee, you're not really doing anything different than you're doing now. That crown, whether it's an in-network crown or a normal fee, that you're charging for that crown, it's $1,350 is your normal fee, and let's say in network it's $780. Nothing is different from a cost perspective with either of those. The lab fee is the same. The amount you spend on your assistant is the same. The amount it costs you to have your office open for that 50 minutes to an hour to prep that crown is exactly the same. The scan or impression material costs you the same amount. You're just getting paid differently for it. So the great thing about dropping plans is you can actually, in a lot of cases, even if you had a 30% loss in patient volume, and again, I'm not recommending you to just, finish the episode and go, heck with it, I'm dropping all the plans. I'm going to give you a couple ideas on how to do it. And like I said, you can check that seminar out. I put the link to it on the episode webpage, or contact us for help because you want to do this systematically, especially depending upon the amount of, network penetration in your practice. If you have a lot, you want to be smart about this. But the point being is you could lose patients and still make the same amount of revenue, is my point. If 3 crowns you were doing at, let's say, $800 a crown, and you drop the plan, and now only those 2 of those patients stick around to get their crown done, and let's say the 3 crowns in network were $800, 2 crowns, because 1 patient left, are $1,350 a piece, you would make $2,400 doing 3 crowns for $800, or $2,700 doing 2 crowns for $1,350. Do you see? So the revenues, usually when you get on a network and you do it correctly, your revenues should not go down. They'll actually stay the same at worst or go up, or should at least. But what is going down is your costs. Material costs, lab fees, labor costs. etc. Okay, so it can't be business as usual. Is the point? There are some changes you want to make internally, but if there's anything you want to, this idea that you can't get out, right? I remember, and again, I'm kind of dating myself here. Back in 1992, all right, during the first Clinton administration, when I was 10. No, I wasn't, a little older, but I was new to the profession at the time. And what was being the fear at the time amongst a lot of doctors was that HMOs were getting a lot of they were gaining a lot of ground in the dental industry. They'd already kind of jumped into healthcare pretty heavily. Now they were coming after dental. So you had doctors, I remember talking to doctors saying, I'm joining every HMO that I can because I'm afraid every patient's going to be in an HMO. And if I'm not in, I'm going to have no patients. Like that was the worry. Everybody was freaked out. There were going to be no patients if you weren't in an HMO. So you had people signing up for, 20 different HMOs or PPOs, anything they could sign up for to make sure that they didn't lose patients. And then you had some that didn't. But we know that that turned out not to be true. There's a good chance, if you're listening to me right now, that you're not involved with a DMO or HMO. You may just be in network with a PPO. But back in 1992, everybody was freaked out about HMOs. So the point being is, there's that fear, there's that worry, but a lot of it is just hype. One thing that you're going to want to be able to do, if you think about it, because we have clients that are completely out of network as far as changing your business practices, is number one, you're going to need to know how to market. Because no other business, if you really think about it, like I don't have an insurance plan that people can come to my business and get a discounted rate because they're part of some insurance plan. And look, I'm not trying to compare practice management training and coaching to healthcare, but you get my point. The average store doesn't have some type of a network plan where people are sent to that store at a discount. They may give out coupons, but it's not like they have a built-in way of getting people through some type of discounted network, which is really, if you want to look at a PPO or even an HMO for that matter, in the correct light, essentially what it is it's a marketing plan. That's all a PPO is. They've cut a deal with you that, look, you charge the people who come into your practice from our plan this much money, and as a result, your name will be on our website, or if they still give it a book, your name will be in the book. Okay, we'll refer patients to your practice. Well, why not cut out the middleman? If I'm going to market, I'm going to bring patients into my practice. Do you see? Why do I have to do it via an insurance company? You might go, well, patients are expecting to pay less. And yeah, some people are. But we have tons of clients that are out of network, and it just seems to work out. So there's definitely a way of doing this and getting paid what you're normally worth. And this isn't just in dentistry. There's lots of medical doctors who don't participate with insurance, and patients just pay cash, Now, one thing is, if you're going to go out of network, I'm not saying that you shouldn't accept assignment. I want to be clear about that, because I've had some offices where they go, okay, I'm just getting out of network. I'm having the patient pay the full fee, and then we'll help them file their insurance. Some of our clients do that. That's not usually what we recommend right off the bat because, the patients find it to be a bit convenient when you file for them. You can accept assignment. It's just that the patient's copay is going to be higher. That's all, So ultimately, one of the things that you have to be able to do is you have to be able to market if you're going to be dropping plans, because that's essentially what these plans are doing for you. The difference is, if I spend $300 on a Google pay-per-click campaign to get a new patient, that's the only, we call that acquisition cost, right? I'm paying that acquisition cost once. Whereas if I'm in network and I'm depending upon an insurance company to send me a patient, I'm paying that acquisition cost every time I see that patient when I'm writing off 30, 40, 50%. It's not a sustainable business model. And every other business on the planet has to market or do something to get new customers. There's no reason why you can't do the same thing. This is why we do our MGE New Patient Workshop. I'll put a link to it on the episode webpage. It's all about how to effectively market your practice and bring in new patients. So let's say you're looking at 2025, and this is the year that you want to start moving out of network. The first thing I would tell you is there is no one size fits all for this, because it really depends on your individual situation. Your whole practice may be PPO, or maybe only 10% of your practice is PPO. So usually what I recommend if I have somebody who wants to drop is give us a call. We have an analysis we do for this. It's free. I'll put a link to it on the episode webpage. We call it our fees and plans analysis. And we'll kind of walk you through it. Normally when we have a client wanting to do this, we walk them through step by step based upon their individual situation. But there are some general guidelines that you could follow when you're doing it. So let's go over those just so you can kind of think with it. First one is, I mentioned a minute ago, you're going to lose, if you do this right, at maximum 30% of the patients if you're in network when you drop their plan. So if you have 1,000 patients in a particular plan and you drop that plan, you shouldn't lose more than 300. Okay, that's the first thing to know. And like I mentioned with Delta, it can get a bit trickier. And Delta is usually the last plan we advise our clients to drop. So you drop the other ones, and Delta is done last. All right. So what's the first thing I would tell you to do if you go, Jeff, I want to drop plans? What do you think I'd tell you to do first? First thing I would actually tell you to do would have nothing to do with plans. First thing would be you're going to focus on two things. One, your new patient marketing, okay? And that also includes on how new patients are handled when they call in, like the phone skills of the people actually answering the phone. I want to make sure that your practice is ready, able, and willing to accept a ton of new patients and that there's no hitches on that line, right? So I don't call your practice and have your receptionist blow me off. Like your receptionist is just dead on the way they handle new patient calls, and your marketing is set so you're getting an adequate number of new patients to replace any patients that we might lose. That's the first thing I'm going to do. The second thing we're going to focus on is reactivation. They might go, Jeff, why are we focusing on reactivation? I did a huge episode on this. It was episode number 167. I think it was called The Definitive Guide to Reactivating Patients. Essentially, the average dental practice is really only seeing maybe about 20% of their base, of their patient base. So if you go to practice and they have 5,000 charts over the last 5-6 years, they're usually only seeing about 1,000 of these patients regularly because the amount of follow-up that's done to keep the rest of the patient base active is just non-existent. So then when you have them drop plans, they start losing people out of those 1,000 people that they're seeing, and then the schedule starts to empty out. Whereas if you focused on getting those 4,000 patients back that you're not seeing while you're dropping plans, the problem sort of sorts itself out as you go, especially if you're doing marketing on top of that. So I'd recommend listen to that episode, the episode 167. I get into it thoroughly. I'm not going to redo that episode here. But if you want to do a little bit of an experiment on this, just to find out how many inactive patients that you have, simple metric you can do. Go to your software and look at how big is your patient base. You get that number. Let's say it's 5,000. Then you look at how many of those 5,000 people have a next visit date after today. So if today is the 20th, how many of these patients have a next visit date from the 21st for the rest of time? And what you'll find is that number is usually in the 20 to 30% range. So out of the 5,000 patients that you have, 1,000 to 1,500 have a next visit date. That means 3,500 don't. So while you're marketing for new patients, you're also going after the patients who already know you and getting those folks back. That's the first action you take before you start dropping plans, because that's going to supplement the volume we may lose when we start dropping plans. So now, assuming you've got that into motion, how do we start dropping plans? Well, there's a few things that you got to do. First thing you have to do is get all your plan contracts, because certain plans require that you do, so there's different ways of dropping them. There are different timelines involved. Some plans may take 6 months to a year to get out of. Some are relatively instantaneous. You want to know where you're at with each one so you have an idea of what it's going to take to drop out and what's required. That's the first thing. Second thing is you have to then sequence how you're going to drop the plans. Now, what do I mean by sequencing? Well, let's say you're in network with 10 different plans. You're going to look at two things. You're going to want the fee schedule for each one, and you want to know the number of patients that you have in each one. So let's make it easy on ourselves. Let's say our smallest plan has the worst fee schedule. We have 10 plans, and our smallest one has 50 patients in it, and the fee schedule is terrible. It's a 60% write-off. Well, that one you can just drop right away. That's easy, right? But let's take how it usually goes. Let's say, the plan that you have the second most patients in has the worst fee schedule, right? So you have to sort of toggle this a little bit. Usually what I recommend is starting with the plan that has the least amount of patients in it. And you kind of work your way up, making Delta the last one. Just because it makes life easy. It's not a cold water dip where it freaks you out if you're dropping a plan with 50 to 100 people. It gives you an opportunity to see, okay, how did this go? How did it affect the practice? Oh, we were okay, right? It gives you a little bit of a way to gradiently move into it. I mean, look, I've seen folks go, I'm just getting out of all of them right now, and, bless them, but that might be a bit too harsh or drastic for most people. So I say you do this at your own pace. Start with the one with the least amount of patients in it and move your way up from there, right? And let's say I have two with a similar number of patients in it. Each one has 300 patients. I'd then drop the one with the worst fee schedule, You see, that's how you're going to work your way up. And keep in mind, some of these may take a while to get out of. So if you start doing this, I don't know, in March of this year, you may not be out of them until next year, but at least you're on your way to getting out of all of them. And, for me, if let's say I'm in a plan and my write-off is 10%, well, that's not bad. That's sort of like a marketing fee, right? I might just stay in that network. Well, what difference does it make? I'm not writing off that much. Now, plans where you're only writing off 10% are few and far between, or they're almost non-existent, or they're a pipe dream, but you get my point. So I'm going to look at these. I'm going to start with the one with the least number of patients and work my way up that list as I go. Now, how do I drop this plan? Because I've had some people say, well, do you send a letter to the patients? Look, this is where I say, do what's real to you. And this is, again, something where we work with our clients on this. A lot of clients don't send a letter. What they do is they drop the plan and they tell the patient when they're confirming them. By the way, we're no longer participating with this, that, or the other, whatever. And they get the patient to show up and come in. I wouldn't tell them when they've already had the services performed and you're asking them for their payment. That might be a bit, rough or rude. That would be a way to create all kinds of problems in the office, right? But there's a few things that you have to keep in mind. So let's say I drop Acme insurance plan. So I've told the patient I'm no longer accepting their plan. They come in for their visit. Now, in some cases, I may be willing, they may go, look, doc, I didn't realize that. And you could say, well, we called you and told you, yeah, but I forgot. You might give them the price that you gave them last time, the plan price one last time or something like this, because you now have the ability to make this decision on your own because you can charge whatever you want because you're no longer in network. Do you see? No one's telling you what you can and cannot charge, which to me is a big deal. If it's your business, you have to be able to decide what you're charging for various goods. You could do something like that. One thing that I think is a good idea, and this was something that, if you remember Sabri, she's been on the podcast quite a few times. She's our Deputy Chief Operating Officer here. This is something she rolled out to our clients, which I really liked, was she had them take a look at, let's say they were in 10 plans, and the plan with the most patients in it, let's say they had 2,000 patients in network, and they had one of these plans had 1,000 of the patients, right? It's the one that had the most patients. So what she did is she had them look and find out what the out-of-network benefit for diagnostic and preventive treatment was in that plan. So, and it's a little complex as I'm explaining it, but track with me on this for a second. Let's say you have 10 plans, and the plan with the biggest number of patients in it is Acme Insurance. And like how I used Acme, so I don't have to use an actual insurance company's name. So let's say it's Acme Insurance, and 1,000 of the 2,000 patients you have in network are in Acme Insurance. So you call Acme Insurance and you find out what the out-of-network benefit is for any preventive or diagnostic treatment, x-rays, cleanings, etc. So what she had these clients do was then reset that as their hygiene fees. Okay, so they actually, in effect, lowered their hygiene fees. These were for practices that were very heavily in network. If you only had 10% of your patients in network, I wouldn't do this. But we're talking about a practice that's almost 100% PPO. You might go, why would you lower your hygiene fees, especially since hygiene is supposed to be a profit center, etc. Well, let's look at something for a second. If you have a very healthy hygiene department, and this assumes that you are charging your normal fees, 30% of your revenues are going to come from hygiene. 70% are going to come from dentistry. So if I could retain my patients, which is what I'm really interested in, by reducing my fees for what only comprises 30% of my business, that's pretty good because I'm going to make my full fee on the other 70%. Does that make sense? So what she does is she has them lower their hygiene fee to whatever the out-of-network benefit is from their biggest plan, and everybody pays that fee. And the reason she did this was this. When mom comes in with the two kids, and you used to be a network provider for their plan, and then they used to have no copay when they came in for their cleanings, and then all of a sudden they get their teeth cleaned, and you tell them their copay is $160, they're going to freak out and possibly leave the practice, okay? Because for whatever reason, we've conditioned patients to think that with preventive and diagnostic treatment, there is no copayment, okay? So instead of not charging a copay, which is, wrong in my opinion, it borders on insurance. It's definitely insurance. I don't know. It could be considered insurance fraud, but whatever. I wouldn't do that. What I would do instead is just lower my fee to whatever that out-of-network benefit is. So then a mom comes in with the kids, and they don't have a copayment. That's just my fee. Okay, cool. But now let's say mom needs 4 crowns. Well, if mom needs 4 crowns in or out of network, mom's expecting to have a conversation about what her copayment's going to be. That's just the way it works. Okay. So when I sit down with mom, she's going to pay my basic and my major services are going to be at my normal fees now. So instead of charging $780 in network for a crown, I'm charging $1350. So mom's going to pay her a copayment for including the amount the insurance won't pay because her insurance only pays up to a certain amount out of network for crowns. She's going to pay the copayment that she would have to pay at my full fee. Do you see? So for basic and major, I'm charging regular fee. Hygiene, I'm charging essentially my fees become what the out-of-network benefit is for my biggest plan. That's something that's been a bit of a game changer because it requires less conversations. And this is another thing that you're going to have to do when you do this is you're going to have to make sure of two things, actually. Number one, your staff have to be fully trained on how to answer questions from patients about this. Like, here's what I wouldn't want to have happen. So a patient calls the office. They heard that we're out of network. Hey, I heard you guys are no longer accepting my plan. Yeah, we don't accept that insurance anymore. Thank you. Let's just blow the patient off. That's irritating, right? Because then they're just going to go somewhere else. You want these folks drilled on how to handle it. No, we still file your insurance. It's just, and for your cleaning, you're going to pay absolutely nothing more than you used to pay. It's still, it's still covered at 100% because you've changed the whole fee structure for your hygiene. Do you see? You want these people drilled on this, all of your staff, so they know how to answer questions from patients, so it doesn't become a problem. Now, let's say you don't do that. It was only, 10% of your practice was in network, and you drop that 10%, and some of those patients are asking, why am I having to pay a copayment for my cleaning? Then you want to train your staff on how to answer those questions. Well, the doctor had to take a look at how he was going to continue to, or she was going to continue to manage the practice at the highest level of quality. So as a result, we decided we couldn't accept that insurance plan anymore because the reimbursement rate was, however you want to do this. Do you see? Whatever's real to you, but you want your staff, you want a shared message amongst the whole group so that your staff are not blowing patients off when they ask questions. Okay, that's the first thing. The second thing that you're going to want to be able to do is you want to get really good at customer service and communication, because if you're not in network and you're not accepting insurance, maybe you're filing insurance for the patient and you're accepting assignment, and you're essentially charging them more, you're going to have to reflect that in the quality of the practice. So you got to get better at case acceptance, and you also have to make sure that your customer service is top notch. And like I said, if you want to untangle yourself from this, because it is doable, the best bet is just to check out that fees and plans analysis I gave you the link to on the episode webpage and have somebody help you through it, because this can be a bit overwhelming and it is a large decision that has potentially far-reaching effects. But in any event, if you end up plan-free by the end of 2025, I want you to just, again, imagine what that would be like. Higher revenues, higher profit, actually getting paid what you're worth, and, it's just better for everybody all the way around, right? So, like I said, I wouldn't say that this is an easy thing to do, but it's definitely doable. And some of these plans take a while to get out of, so this is something that you're going to want to start on sooner or later. Like I said, don't forget that seminar that I mentioned earlier on. It's 2 nights from now if you want to check it out. It's a good way to kind of get your feet wet and start thinking about this. Folks, let's have a great 2025. I've got the links on the episode webpage. I hope this helps. That's all I have for you this week. If you want to know more about MGE, you can find us online at mgeonline.com or call us at 800-640-1140. Have a great week, and I'll see you at the next episode.